Is the US planning an attack on Iran? Senior editor Paul Jay talks with Real News correspondent and writer Aijaz Ahmed. Based in New Delhi, Aijaz is Senior Editorial Consultant and political commentator for the Indian news magazine Frontline. He has taught political science and written widely on South Asia and the Middle East.
Is the United States planning an attack on Iran, in your opinion?
You see, Paul, I have been seeing since August 2003 reports in a variety of the dominant media that an attack on Iran is imminent. What is new about these new reports is the level at which now they are saying the attack will be focused. They're now talking of 10,000 military targets. They are talking of the destruction of all the basic military infrastructure of Iran. If they do very limited attacks on, let's say, the nuclear facilities, they will not achieve their objectives. In fact, they will strengthen Iran in strategic terms. The second point that I want to make is that there is no indication whatsoever that Iran either wants to or is capable of making a nuclear bomb in the near future. There is a fatwa in place from Imam Khomeini forbidding the creation of a nuclear weapon by Iran. The entire Iranian clergy has said again and again that we shall not make such a weapon.
A point that was made to me recently by an Iranian friend that we forget about in the West is that thousands and thousands of Iranians were being killed by gas and other things by Iraq, and the UN and the West wouldn't lift a finger to stop it.
You see, Paul, one no longer remembers that at the time of the Iran-Iraq war, Iran had no capacity for biological or chemical or nuclear warfare. Iran had not wanted to develop such a capacity. Saddam Hussein had that capacity thanks to the technology given to him by Britain especially and the United States. Saddam used it against Iran, Saddam used it against the Kurds, Saddam used it against all kinds of people. And the Western media and Western governments kept blaming Iran for it. Iran did not even have the capacity to do it. It is only when the United States turned against Saddam that the real news came out that gas was used by Saddam Hussein against the Kurds and so on. Iranis at that time kept begging the so-called international community to intervene, and no one moved. They all supported Saddam and suppressed the story. Iran's decision to have some basic technology of chemical, biological weaponry comes after this betrayal of Iran by the entire so-called international community. Had the West intervened at that time and protected Iran against those gas attacks, the history of that region would have been different. I believe that Iran today is where India was during the Nehru period, in the 50s and 60s, which is to say that so long as there are weapons in the hands of Israel, in the hands of the United States and everyone else, we must have the capability to do it, but we must not actually create a weapon. Enrichment program gives them that capability, and they have the sovereign right to have that enrichment program. That still puts them quite far away from being able to actually do it. If you want to look at Iranian nuclear program dispassionately, they do not have the capability to make a weapon in any near future, but they will not budge from two things. One, the enrichment program, which they have the sovereign right to pursue, and delivery systems, missile technology, which is not covered by any NPT or anything like that. That is where Iranian energies are going.
The three leading candidates of the Democratic Party, President Bush, all the Republican candidates, perhaps with the exception of Ron Paul, have all taken a fundamental position on this, which is Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. All options are on the table, which suggests even the possibility of a nuclear strike. No one at any level of leadership of either party questions that assumption. What do you make of the American political alignment on this case?
Yes, that's a very interesting question, Paul, because the most immediate background elsewhere is the report from El-Baradei, the IAEA chairman. This is an agreed timetable between the IAEA and the government of Iran to resolve the remaining questions. It's a report that is in fact highly favorable to Iran, regardless of the spin that the dominant media in the United States is putting on it. And one of the problems the Bush government now is facing is that it cannot prolong the issue of, of Iran's belligerence on the nuclear issue. All this thing that you mentioned, this consensus among all the presidential candidates, both Republican and Democratic.
Not all. The leading ones.
Yeah, virtually all of them.
Well, there's an interesting dissenter, which is Joe Biden. And Biden actually specifically said, if you want Iran not to build a nuclear bomb, and he made the point that Iran, even if they want one, is at least a decade away. He says if you don't want them to have a bomb, then why don't you start with stop threatening regime change? Biden's actually separated him, but all the other leading candidates seem to be on the same page.
And I'm particularly worried about the kind of belligerent positions that Obama and Hillary Clinton are taking from the Democratic side.
Yes, Obama actually sponsored a piece of legislation in the Senate calling for tougher sanctions against Iran.
That's right, and it was passed with virtual unanimity from what I recall. So that's where the problem is. But the problem is not that Iran is close to making a bomb, either in intent or in capability. Now what you have is that El-Baradei took a very tough stance in the past, has always taken a tough stance. So you cannot fault him for any pro-Irani positions or anything like that. But he is now the chief person submitting reports, and his report, his most recent report, is categorical on that.
You wouldn't know any of this by watching American television.
You would never know any of it by watching, in fact, quite the opposite. Because the spin there is that Iran is being asked to answer certain questions within a certain time, as if there was some kind of an ultimatum. It is, in fact, that is why I emphasize those words, that it's an agreed timetable between the government of Iran and the IAEA to address the remaining questions. This administration is determined to attack Iran before it leaves office. I am very worried about it. I think there is at least a 50% chance that it will happen. And part of my worry is that Elliot Abrahams has now emerged as the second most important person in the State Department, next only to Condoleezza Rice. And I think that the balance of force between Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice is shifting in favor of Dick Cheney, which is much more the war party. I mean, so is Condoleezza Rice, but if you want to make distinctions, Cheney is much more of the war party. And Elliot Abrahams is, of course, absolutely a crazy man. So there may be actually compulsions within the administration to blow it all up before they leave office. That's certainly a possibility.